Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you and call the Tuesday, March 28th work session of the Harnett County Board of Commissioners to order, and I will ask Commissioner Brooks Matthews to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Our Father, we do thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity we have to be here to discuss the affairs of the county. We thank you for these who are willing to serve. We thank you for these who are in attendance today. We just ask you to bless this meeting, look over us, keep us safe, and grant us wisdom as we have discussions about issues surrounding our county and our citizens. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. All right. Well, good morning. We'll go ahead and get started. Report to the people, Mr. Tim Matthews. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. How are y'all today?
Good.
I want to thank you this morning for allowing us just a little bit of time to share with you a few of the highlights from this past year's extension programs. While extension continues to be one of the best kept secrets, and we're trying to correct that, we provide a tremendous amount of research-based information to the citizens of Harnett County. This past year, and that's 2022, our office reported 709 programs through a variety of different methods, including radio, virtual programs, and in-person events, for a total of 567 contact hours. The number of attendees or the reach of these programs was 73,333. And to be clear, this doesn't include the phone calls, the walk-ins we get in our office, and the activities offered by and through our volunteers. As you'll hear from each of our different program areas, there are a lot of good things happening with Cooperative Extension. The university resources that we bring to the local level are a key benefit to this county, providing growers and communities in Harnett County with direct access to some of the world's best researchers who are solving challenges of both today and tomorrow. Just this past week, our advisory council visited the Plant Science Building on the NC State campus, where some of this critical research is taking place. So Cooperative Extension truly is the connection between our universities and the county. This morning, we want you to hear from some of our clients, so we've invited a few of them to speak on our behalf. We will begin with our agriculture program and finish up with one of our 4-H'ers. There's only 4 of us, so we're not going to be here all day. But I've asked each of them to keep their comments to 3 minutes. So with that, we're going to have somebody from our agriculture program come up first. Brian has asked Dudley Langdon if he would speak.
Good morning, Commissioners. I suppose I'm here to represent the farmers in Harnett County, which is a poor representation. I'm a lifelong Harnett County resident, retired farmer. I just stepped down after 10 years as Farm Bureau President here in Harnett County. We worked hard with Extension. They have a lot of the same goals as Farm Bureau does, which is a member organization that happens to sell insurance. In the past, some people perceive us as an insurance company, but it is a group of farmers on the state and national level to group together to get our viewpoints heard. Agriculture is changing so fast that technical and the information you have to keep up with is changing so fast that you have to have outside help to do it. A lot of farmers hire consultants. We're lucky we have the extension service. If they don't know the answer, they'll find it for you, or they'll refer you to somebody that does know. They're very much involved in the county. They do all they can to help, and it's much appreciated. We also have restrictions and certifications that we have to go through. Pesticide regulation is the top one. If you use a restricted use pesticide, agricultural-wise, you have to be certified and trained. Brian trains over 210 a year. Certification test is for face mask. That's the only time I ever shaved in the last 40 years was to get my face mask checked every year. I don't have to do that anymore. That's one of the things off that list I don't have to do anymore. Mr. Matthews is laughing at me. He knows. But they are the production meetings for certification for each individual crop, chemical uses, safe practices. You hear all the terrible things that happen in agriculture. You know, the waste and the hog waste. Not well. Our farmers are trained on this stuff, and you know, when there is something bad that happens, it's 1 out of 100, and we're getting to be a smaller minority all the time. In my lifetime, before the tobacco buyout, every widow in the community had a little bit of tobacco allotment, and her voice was heard. Now there's only a few farmers left. We're getting to be smaller, larger operations. It's a business. You know, you know, the perception, some of y'all would understand this, some of you's not old enough, but a lot of people's interpretation of a farmer is Mr. Green Jeans, Captain Kangaroo. And some of this, he wouldn't understand that. That might be, I'm dating myself here. But the idea of a farmer is somebody standing around with a pair of coveralls on chewing on a piece of straw with a straw hat is long gone. It's a business, and we need all the help we can to keep that managed. And any help the commissioners give us goes that long way. I'm going to change tracks here a little bit. I'm a member of the Volunteer Ag District Committee that's appointed by the commissioners. And we would love to be able to be an agricultural resource for the Board of Commissioners. Farmland preservation, safe development, soil conservation, all those things figure in on this. These are regulations that we deal with every day. It may not be something that's on your agenda every day, but with farmers it is. Safely moving equipment up and down the road. That is a major headache. We have farmers that don't move equipment until after midnight in the northern end of the county because the traffic's so bad. If they have to move a big piece of equipment, they move it after dark. You think that's unsafe, but you're talking about it's not the roadway is not the problem. It's the traffic on that roadway. And for these people that get behind a farmer moving a piece of equipment and why he won't slide over on the shoulder and let them by everywhere. Well, that tire on that piece of equipment may cost $2,000, and a broken bottle, he's out $2,000. So you get to be a little bit particular when you can slide over and when you can watch that mailbox up there. It's not I don't know how many mailboxes I've paid for over the years. It was either hit a car or hit a mailbox. You know, you have to make that choice. Well, I'll go back and pay him for his mailbox, but use the Volunteer Ag District. We work hard with the Farm Bureau and with the Extension Service, and they do a good job. Any questions? Well, maybe I didn't do too bad of a job yet. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, I have a representative from our horticulture program, Fred. Fred Robinson, sorry.
As in Crusoe. Good morning. Again, my name is Fred Robinson, and for the last 18 years or so, I have owned and operated the Rabbit Ridge Nursery, which is located in Coates, North Carolina. I would say that with a smidgen of pride. I started that adventure at 58 years old as a first-generation farmer. Currently, all my employees are first-generation farmers. All my employees are female. So that makes us pretty unique, I think. Selena has asked us to come as non-professional farmers to solicit and talk to you about adding a position with the ag team. Through Harnett Ag's help, my wife is a physician, so I have to talk for that too. Through Harnett Ag's help, we've been able to grow a fairly unique variety of plants, fruits and berries in Harnett County. We grow the usual blueberries and blackberries and all, but additionally, We're growing kiwis, pomegranates, olives, tayberries, loganberries, boysenberries, marionberries, and my personal favorite, everbearing raspberries. There are probably not a whole lot of farmers growing raspberries in Harnett County, but through the help of these guys over here, we figured out how to do it. We have made a ton of mistakes. As a matter of fact, rumor is that in the book of mistakes, Rabbit Ridge Nursery's got several chapters dedicated to it. But we have managed every time to come back through their help. I'm almost done. We have used those guys since we didn't know what we were doing, at least initially. They'd come over and identify insects for us, tell us what the holes in the leaves were. We didn't know what that was. We didn't know how to prune. We didn't know how to water. We didn't know soil amendments. We didn't know any of that. And they didn't charge us for that. The only way we could get additional information was to go buy plants somewhere, and as long as we were putting $20 bills on the table, the people we were buying the starter plants from would talk to us. But yet that's an ending situation. That can't last very long. But they've always been there for us. We hear, and I'm sure you guys more know about this than I do, traffic problems are going to get worse with all the houses that have been permitted in Harnett County. I suspect strongly that with all these new homeowners, there are going to be a lot more first-generation farmers. I don't expect they're going to be out doing orchards and growing raspberries necessarily, but I do hope they'll be doing family gardens and learning how to prune stuff. And I know that the Harnett Ag people will step up to the plate again, but it's getting harder. They've got so many demands on their times, and they've helped so many people for so long. It seems to me, in conclusion, it seems to me that those that have helped for so long now need some help. And I encourage you to help them by funding an additional position. Any questions? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next, representing our CRD program is Veronica Smith.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Happy to be here this morning. This morning, I want to talk about the help that we have gotten from the extension by way of Ms. Kitchen Sanders. She has brought to our community a wealth of knowledge. She has brought, she's helped us to bridge the gap actually to this meeting. Oftentimes we've been here because she's encouraged us and told us about the importance of knowing what's going on in the community. We were a community that needed help, didn't know we needed help, and when she came to help, oftentimes she came into a place of confusion, but by teaching us and showing us a better way, we were able to bridge the gap, and we're still bridging that gap, and we're getting closer to meeting our needs. She has helped us to be more confident in what our community needs, what's important, what's low-hanging fruit, what's obtainable, how to obtain it. So that's been helpful to us. Very effective in helping us to carry out certain projects from beginning to end, rather than be confused about, how do we do it, where do we do it, and sometimes should we bother to do it. So she's been a tremendous help. She's helping us by writing grants for us. We've been able to do community prayer walks. We've been able to do community block parties and health information segments where people have learned so much about what's in their community, what's available, and how to get to it. So those are important things for communities that I come from, as well as she's brought a wealth of technology that we just didn't have, and we really needed that. We've learned about Jamboard sessions. We've actually spent time in Zoom meetings, free workshops that have helped us to learn and to grow as a community. So all those things have helped us to be a better community. So I can't say how much the extension is really, really helping us to grow and to also come together as a community and to meet the needs of the community. We have neighbors, for example, that we just don't know. Today's a different day. Everyone doesn't know their neighbors, but the way we've come together, we're able to meet our neighbors, and they're coming to our meetings, and she's helping us to extend ourselves so that we know them, they know us, and there's a trust, and that's very important today when people are coming from so many different places that you just don't always know who's who. So I want to say, she's proven to be trustworthy. She's proven to be knowledgeable, to be kind, to be patient, very, very patient. And we're grateful for all the help that we have received from the extension. And I just pray that it continues because it's well needed. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. And next we have with us Matthew DeYounger, one of our 4-H members, and he's going to come and speak on behalf of 4-H.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Did you know that sorry. Did you know that Harnett County 4-H served 2,824 youth in 2022? I'm here today to talk to you a little bit more about how these programs have affected me and why Harnett County should continue to support these awesome clubs and classes. My name is Matthew DeYounger. I am the president of the Explorers 4-H Club and a youth member of the Extension Advisory Council. This is my 5th year of being involved with 4-H. I've had so much fun, and I have learned so many things over those years. Our motto is to make the best better, and I believe that it does. The Explorers Club meets once a month throughout the year, and our goal is to explore new trades and crafts in the area. Usually, we are at the extension office, but sometimes we take field trips, like the time we went to the nuclear power plant for a tour and learned how Duke Energy can create and share energy. I have learned about bridge building, corn production, catapults, sewing, baking, and chocolate, among many other things throughout the Explorers Club. Along with the vice president, the secretary, historian of the club, I help our club advisors to plan our monthly meetings on the topic of learning to some icebreakers and team building activities. If you have any topics, we'd love to explore it. Throughout the activities from the club, I've been able to create and enter projects into the NC State Fair twice. I have earned a blue ribbon in 21 and a second place ribbon last year for my building projects. Next time you're at the State Fair, I encourage you to go to the educational building and look at the amazing talent that our state's 4-H youth have to share. At District Activity Day last year, I presented a speech about the history of baseball within North Carolina, and I earned a second place ribbon. And I learned how to present a speech using a PowerPoint and how to better engage an audience when speaking. I've also been able to participate in the chicken project. My brother, sister, and I have received 6-week-old chickens to raise. We created project record books that included parts of the chicken, learning about egg production and the costs of raising hens. It's not as cheap as some people think. I've also been involved with a 4-H Summer Fun program, which is very aptly named because we have so much fun with Mr. Jackie and Mr. Greg at the summer workshops. Our 4-H Summer Fun program served 157 youth in the 12 programs over 36 days in the summer of 2022. Some of those days had morning and afternoon sessions so more youth could participate. The more kids that can come, the more fun with learning we can have. My brother, sister, and I have taken several of the 4-H Summer Fun cooking classes. It would be really nice if the kitchen was a better space for our multiple people learning, like we were to take turns waiting for the oven. We have lots of fun to get together, if I haven't mentioned that already. There is a popcorn machine in the kitchen that Mr. Jackie insists is a time machine. And everyone knows that about my brother's famous blueberry muffins that he made at one of the cooking classes, or should I say, infamous. You see, he learned the important lesson of correctly reading the recipes that day when he switched the measurements of salt for the salt from 1/4 teaspoon to 1/4 cup. We also have an outdoor cooking class, or grilling classes. The best part is getting to taste all the delicious food made in the class. During COVID, Mr. Tim offered a grilling class over Zoom. That was awful because at the end we had to watch him get to eat his delicious-looking ribeye steak over a computer screen. And then there was a time that in model rocketry class when Mr. Jackie launched a rocket with a GoPro. He went off into the woods and he couldn't find it. It took him a week to get it back. I have so many good memories with 4-H. So in closing, please support Harnett County Cooperative Extension 2023 through 2024 budget so we can grow the number of Harnett County citizens we serve and help reach our goals for the next 10 years. I'd also like to thank you for your past support of our program. Students like me appreciate the opportunities we have through 4-H. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I've got to say, I've been dreading all week having to come up after Matthew. But appreciate that, Matthew. And so anyway, Commissioner, I want to thank you once again for all the support you continue to provide to Cooperative Extension as we continue to extend research-based knowledge to the citizens of North Carolina, helping them to transform science into everyday solutions that improve their lives. And finally, I'd like to just share a few numbers about what the county gets in return for their investment with us. In 2022, our team was responsible for securing financial resources in the amount of $174,417 through grants, donations, and sponsorship of our programs. Our volunteers, including 4-H, Extension Community Association, Extension Master Gardeners, our Community and Rural Development volunteers, and our Advisory Council contributed 11,357 hours of community service. The federal government values volunteer service at a rate of $29.95 per hour. This places the value of our volunteers at $340,143. One of our other programs, Teen Court, 4-H, has actually saved our court program an approximate $210,000 by keeping first-time offenders out of the court system and providing them with a second chance. So these are just a few of the tangible numbers that we can actually see and report. They don't take into account the farmers who may have saved a crop through implementing the recommendations that we give to them, or money saved through the food industry by avoiding a foodborne illness. And I'll take a moment right here to say, you notice that our FCA agent is not here. It's because he's at our office teaching a Safe Plates class today. And it also doesn't take into account all those other programs, those intangible things that you don't see. So at this time, I'd like to just end up, I would like to take this time to present the board with a symbolic check representing just a portion, and those are the things I mentioned, of what our team provides in return for your investment. So, could I get somebody to come down and one or all of you? And I can get Matthew, you want to come up? Our speakers, you want to come up with this one? This is a big number. All right.
There's a robe here. Yep. Next time.
I forgot to give you this.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well put together.
Thank you.
Thank you so
And I
much.
think we've all got other things going on, so we're going to respectfully excuse ourselves. Thank you.
We appreciate you and your team's hard work and everything y'all do, so thank you so much. All right, moving on. Space needs study update. Mr. Trout.
Thank you, Chairman. So today we have Kimberly Pearson from Dewberry Engineering Firm. Her firm was contracted to do a facility condition assessment and space needs planning and feasibility studies in some designated areas. These are the reports that were generated by that. It was a very exhaustive process. They looked at every one of our buildings to see what the condition was, what the needs were, and then also look at some of the future needs that we may have and what those might cost us. So Kimberly can come forward and she'll go through a PowerPoint presentation that she's prepared to give you some of the highlights of the work that they did.
Good morning. So as Brent mentioned, my name is Kim Pearson and I work with Dewberry Engineers. And this is Mr. Dave Carey. He represents the architecture side with HH Architecture. So thank you for this chance to go over a lot of information. As you can see, it's several binders, so we try to condense it down. Feel free to ask us questions as we go. There's a lot of information and I don't want you to forget your questions. So a little over the scope of the project. The whole goal of this was to evaluate the building and understand the condition that it's currently in, as well as plan for the next 20 years. So these would be things like HVAC replacement, fire protection system replacement, the things that would keep the building operating as it currently stands, not necessarily making any major changes. And then from that, HH did a space analysis trying to understand how the county is going to grow. How much space do you need? What space do you need now that's currently not having those needs met versus what will you need in 20 years in terms of staffing and storage and all those types of things? So all of this got put together. We spent quite a bit of time in the field going through the building, getting to know the facility staff really well, and looking at everything that was happening, as well as interviewing the staff to understand what they need versus what they think they're going to need, and trying to come together with great conclusion to help you plan. So we only looked at some of the building, not necessarily all of them. The Department of Social Services and the Health Department, that building, as well as Cooperative Extension, Regional Water, Emergency Services, the former Ben Haven School that's currently not being used, facilities, IT, the courthouse, and then Board of Elections. We also did go and have a conversation with adult probation and juvenile justice as a way to understand their space needs and if there was a way to bring them back closer to the heart of everything, to the courthouse, and not have to lease those spaces. So we wanted to just give a high-level overview of the things that we found. The capital improvement plan, being 20 years, is very intense. It covered a lot of things, but there were some overarching themes that we saw as we were going through. The fire alarm system throughout all of these buildings needs to be replaced, and so we have recommendations for a comprehensive plan for that. There are a lot of MEP systems, so mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, that needs updates, mostly because they're already outside their useful life. So those are things that could potentially fail and cause a little bit of an upset in the budget because you're having to replace them sooner than you thought or sooner than you planned for. There is a lot of visible wear and tear on architectural finishes, just as you expect from a building being used heavily throughout its life. There's a lack of fire protection systems, so making sure that your occupants are safe and that we're meeting current code. Even though your buildings are met code when they were designed, there's the next step to try and make sure you're meeting current codes or better. And then just replacing asphalt pavement as well as some pedestrian pavement. There are some issues that we saw just to make things safe and easier to last longer for everyone to access your facilities. So a little bit more about the fire alarm system. We recommend that you guys create a comprehensive fire alarm program. This is kind of two-step. First, it's having someone come in and evaluate the fire alarm system more in detail and giving you recommendations for replacement. There are a lot of vendors that can do this for you, and it can be a wonderfully phased, staggered approach, so you're not spending a lot of money up front. But then they will also team that with the second part, which is a preventative maintenance plan. And so that's where we see that the preventative maintenance keeps you from having these large expenses, because as you're going, you're maintaining the system as it is, but you can do little upgrades and tweaks here or there as technology evolves or the system needs to change, and that will reduce a lot of the costs in the future of having to do a full replacement. So taking those two together, we recommend this whole comprehensive plan just to make sure that your buildings are operating as safely as possible and you're providing a really great environment for people to be. Some other life safety concerns that we saw while we were looking through the building was fall protection. These are fairly minimal, but something that you'll want to address very soon, just because one, it's code required, and two, it's just for the safety of all of your staff members. There are a few areas within the courthouse that you could just easily be working on something and not paying attention and just accidentally fall, as well as in the attic space of the commons area of the Department of Social Service building. Fire protection systems are lacking in some of the buildings just because they're not code required, or they weren't when the building was created. You can see the list of the buildings, most of them, but there is the opportunity to go back when doing renovation or doing any capital improvement plans in the future that will let you add fire protection systems. This not only protects your occupants, but at the end of the day, a fire protection system is there to protect your investment, so your building. There's lots of ways that you can integrate these in without having to do major renovation. The cost will still be there, but at the end of the day, it's the balance between, are you protecting your property and limiting future expenses? This is very hard to read. You guys have this chart, but this is overall what you can see we developed. The capital improvement plan, it walks through each building and what we would expect in terms of cost for the first few years all the way out to 20 years. It is a little staggering when you look at it at first, but it's also important to note that a lot of systems within 20 years are going to be replaced once, twice, maybe 3 times. HVAC systems last anywhere from 15 to 30 years, depending on the system, and based on its current life, might be replaced multiple times. So the county manager's office has a very nice digital version of this as well as a printed version, and we provided a printed version for you guys as well. And then we have further spreadsheets that break it down per building so you can understand how that falls into the different categories: electrical, plumbing, architecture, what have you. And so one of the things we did touch on separately from this was looking at the upfit of the current shell space that's in the Department of Social Services. This is on the second floor. You guys have a lot of the infrastructure already in place there. So we went through and estimated what it would cost to finish out those systems, provide more of the upfit. The thing that this does not include is the FF&E, so any of your furnishings or anything like that that would be added after the fact. But we added in a contingency, and these numbers are based off of what our firms are seeing for current construction costs. The market is really volatile right now, but we tried our best to stick with something we felt represented what you would exceed when you would bid this out. And so roughly it's $1.1 million, and you can use ARPA funding for that. So hopefully that's something you guys can move forward with and implement, so that way you have some more space in that existing building.
Good morning. Dave Carey with HH Architecture. We are a sub-consultant to Dewberry. So in addition to assisting Dewberry with the FCA facility condition assessments, we also looked at the space planning. And so like Kim said, this was a 20-year look ahead, and we looked at the projected space needs for 20 different departments. And so we interviewed 20 different departments. We had a series of questionnaires for them, looked at their current space needs and how they operate now, and then what their projected growth is over the course of the next 20 years. We looked at, for the staffing, we looked at office space, workroom space, storage space, meeting space, conference rooms, everything associated with an individual member and how they would operate. From that, after that, we went out to each of the different facilities and actually looked at how they operate now to see if there was any efficiencies, if there was space that wasn't being used efficiently now, or you had shelf space that could be used, things like that, and just really got a sense of how the buildings operate now and how the folks operate within those buildings. So what we discovered was you have currently in the county about 640 staff members. And over the course of the next 20 years, that is expected to grow to about 970. So about a 50% growth. That translates into square footage, of course, and that square footage number is about a 91,000 square foot deficit. Now, again, that's 20 years, but that is a deficit that we wanted to look at. So from there, we started to develop some space plan options. We looked at 2 different options for all the buildings. Then we met with your leadership team to discuss those options and to see what the priorities were and how to sort of put this puzzle together.
So from there, we developed what we are calling the feasibility studies, and this was really to look at where do we need to make major changes, not just simply we're going to convert a few spaces or we're going to shift around a few spaces like we have from the space plans in the other building. But we found that these 3 buildings, the Department of Social Service and Health Department, the courthouse, and emergency services, all require a significant change. So whether that's addition or completely renovating sections of the building, these are the ones we wanted to focus on and the leadership wanted to focus on so we could plan ahead and help you guys understand what the investment is going to be. So we picked these 3, we focused on them, and we dove down more into the nitty gritty of the numbers, trying to give, instead of a very high level cost, taking it a step down to what we would see if we were to bid this out or design this now. So we went through these 3, we talked about over options with the leadership group, and we came to a conclusion of how we could shift things around to make it work as effectively as possible. And so Dave's going to walk through what we ended up doing for each of those options.
So priority number 1 was the Department of Social Services and Health Department, what we're calling the little campus over there. Right currently now, the buildings in white is what's there now, the L-shaped buildings A, B, and C. And so we've broken this down into sort of 3 pieces. One, the rectangle, the red rectangle on the left would be a new 45,000 square foot building. Building C, which is on the bottom there, would receive a new 13,600 square foot addition, which is the little red box to the left of building C. And then buildings A and B would be repurposed. So to dive down in a little bit deeper in this, this is the plan layouts, that same configuration. The building on the left in the blue is the new 2-story building. This would be where we would propose moving all of DHS out of building A and B and into that new building. The green building on the bottom is currently DSS. To meet their needs, we would, as Kim mentioned, not only finish out their 2nd-story shell space, but also add a new addition onto the left-hand side of that building. Once those 2 parts of the project would be complete, that would leave buildings A and B completely open and to receive new departments. And so what we have talked about with leadership is bringing juvenile justice and adult probation over to this campus and out of buildings that are currently rented. So they would go into building A, and then building B, we would move the Board of Elections over to this location. They are currently at another county-owned building off-site, and it's grossly undersized for their needs, and so we would propose to put them into building B. Looking at opinion of cost, again, these are in today's dollars, and we've broken this down by discipline, so by architecture costs, site civil, structural, mechanical, electrical, and then plumbing and fire protection. And we've tried to just kind of break this down for you and look at all the different little pieces and parts of the different projects that could happen here. And so to total all that up, you can see at the bottom the rough order of magnitude cost for all of this is $36 million. Now, of course, that all doesn't have to be done at once, right? That's a new building addition, and then that's renovating 3 other buildings. So it sounds like a lot of money, but it is a lot of project happening, and it all doesn't happen at once. We have spelled out in detail in the report how we could phase that and do that in different parts and pieces. The next priority that we looked at is the courthouse facility itself. Again, this is an aerial view. The building to the left is the building we're currently in. The courthouse is the building to the top. And then the Register of Deeds building is a separate annex building to the bottom of the courthouse. What's great about this location is somebody had the foresight previously to sort of leave space for another building addition. So you can see that's what we've proposed to do is put a new 2-story addition in the red box there to the bottom right. And I'll get into that in a moment of what that houses. So one of the top priorities was to provide more courtroom space in the courthouse itself. The third floor currently has, the half of the floor is currently shell space. And so we would propose, you can see in the pink on the right-hand side, 2 new courtroom spaces and their associated support spaces as well. And then the new building that we had proposed, what we would propose to do is on the first floor, move the district attorney's office out of the courtroom, the main courthouse building itself, and into this new building. And what this does is this allows them to have the growth that they need, but it also frees up space in the courthouse building itself for all of the other different departments to also meet their growth needs. And on the second floor, we would propose a new public defender's office. Again, just breaking this down by different sub-projects and by disciplines. The total package here of $20 million. Again, that's renovating all 3 floors of this main building and constructing a new 2-story building. And then lastly, our third priority was the emergency services campus. Again, looking at the aerial, the building in gray on the left is the existing building. And what we're proposing to do is build a new 6,700 square foot addition there in the red, and then a new 23,000 square foot warehouse facility, which is the big building in the blue. And so again, just breaking this down, this is the plan that we have looked at. This is the existing building with the renovation to the top. And what this provides is expanded training space, expanded sleeping quarters, expanded offices for EMT, for fire, for emergency management, and then currently the DMV and the highway patrol are in this building, and they will remain in this building. And then, like I said, we have also proposed a 23,000 square foot warehouse space. This is for all the vehicles and mobile units, trailers, equipment, supplies, everything that would be needed for this campus. A lot of this is already stored at another facility, at the IT facility and the warehouse facility here in the county, but it is grossly undersized for what they're going to need. So we have proposed this new warehouse, which would bring all of that equipment to this adjacent to their existing building. And then again, just looking at this into subgroups and breaking it down by disciplines, the total package for this is about $6.8 million. And again, this is renovating the existing building, the new building addition, and the warehouse building. Any questions?
Yes, sir. I have a question for the young lady. You said early on in your presentation that the fire alarm systems are not working.
It's not that they're not working, it's that they're outdated, and there are some changes that could be made, especially in making them addressable type systems or systems that are.
What you're saying is, by your standards, they've exceeded their expected life.
Correct.
Okay, but they're still functioning as intended.
They're still functional. Everything is safe. Anything that we noticed while we were on site that would pose a hazard, we've already notified facilities as we were walking through with them, and those have been corrected. So everything's safe. It's just planning and getting them to where they're meeting current standards.
Okay, that was the first thing. The Superior Courtroom upstairs, the undeveloped area up there.
Yes.
And this probably goes outside of your forte, so to speak. But with the volume of cases that are being moved in the other courtroom on the 3rd floor, why do we need to add another courtroom?
We had a very lengthy discussion with everybody that works within the courthouse and understanding the projected needs and their issues that they're having now. There seems to be a lot of conflict with scheduling courtrooms and making sure everything has this space. So there's been a lot of input from them.
I realize the clerk's office needs some office space, and maybe the DA's office does too. I was just looking at the court docket versus what's being tried and what's being eliminated off the docket versus the space we're using. And that's more of a political issue than anything else. So don't take that as me taking a shot at you. But okay. All right.
Thank you. I have some questions.
Sure.
How did this all come about? I mean, there are so many things that we need in this county. And some of it makes sense to me, and some of it doesn't make sense to me. And simply because the Board of Election should have been the first thing on the list as far as building another building or renovating another building. I don't understand all this other stuff. The third floor on the courthouse, that certainly needs to be renovated or used because it's just sitting there. The second floor on the social service building could be renovated. We just built that building less than 4 or 5 years ago. It's not even being used. I mean, that floor, it's not even being used. And what you're talking about is reconstructing the whole county. And I know it has been planned many years to bring everything to this site here. But where's the space? That's what I'm concerned about. So I don't understand where all of this stuff come from. There's so many needs that we fail to address here in this county that to me, I don't understand this. We don't even have a program to try to bring any affordable homes to the citizens of this county. And I'm not saying this at you guys. You guys were hired to do a project, and I appreciate your work. But I just don't understand the thinking of the citizens here. I'm thinking about the need here. And that your project probably would be needed. But it's not a need that we need right now. There are so many other needs. Schools. We need, with all this population growth that we have in here, we need to build a lot more schools than we have for our kids. What are we going to do 10 years from now? And it has nothing to do with you guys. You all are here for a project to present us with a plan for the future. But my thinking is there are so many other things that we need right now. So I was focusing on adding more to these buildings that we have, the limited amount of space that we have here on this site here, and what we can feasibly put on this site. So I thank you for coming in and expressing our needs as far as moving for the future. But I just think we have so many needs now for the present, more so than we need to be thinking of. We need to think about now and the needs that we need now, rather than dealing all that. The fire alarms and all of that, I see that as, I'm glad you brought that to our attention because I think that's an immediate need for us to address. Safety of our citizens is very important. I'm sorry, that's all I got to say.
Comments? Questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
The next step really on all of this for us as staff is to look at these particular projects as we go forward in the future. The information that's presented here today will give us the baseline estimates, costs, opportunities that we can take advantage of in the future. So what you'll likely see is changes in the budget as far as looking at different capital improvement projects for the future as we go forward, including today through the ARPA funding. We'll talk about the second floor renovation of the DSS building using the ARPA funding for that. So that's an example. The number that we had initially for that project was 1.6 million. Through the process that Dewberry's done, they've analyzed it and determined it's closer to 1.1. And we're looking at budgeting 1.2 for it. So this process gives us the information we need when we're looking to present different alternatives to you for the future, and as you go forward and make decisions for us in the county. So this is good planning information for us.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. I appreciate those comments. Kind of follow up on Commissioner McCoy's comments. I agree that this is probably a little bit bigger scope than I anticipated this study would be, but I do think it's good information for the future. But I would agree that we have some more pressing needs probably than new buildings on
Correct.
this campus, if you will, right now. But I did want us to see how the utilization of the existing space we have, plus the potential with the shell space we have, what the future might look like for that, for the most efficient use of the facilities that basically we currently have, or at least we have the shell space that, small upfit, well, nothing small in these discussions, but upfitting those spaces. So, I agree with Commissioner McCoy. I do agree with you as well that that's good information for the future, but, I'm really interested in looking at how we can best utilize the space we have today, or that space that can easily be upfitted for use today.
Thank you.
This is great information for a budget workshop to plan for down the
Oh, yeah.
road. Don't get me wrong, that just caught my eye. I thought she was saying that none of our fire alarms were working, and we had all these people in the buildings.
Sure. No,
I
good
was fixing to get a hold of Larry and say, okay.
No, and I think the other thing that, the board in the last budget set aside $500,000 to do maintenance projects of the existing buildings. And one of the things that this study did was identify that we have other needs beyond probably that the 500,000 is going to be able to support. So that's another budget decision that we're going to have to make, is identifying which projects are the most important and how do we look at additional funding for the future for fixing some of those things, and not even necessarily fixing, updating a lot of those types of things that we plan to keep many of these buildings for a long time, and so eventually we'll have to do some changes and maintenance work on those buildings in order to continue to utilize them.
And we've wrestled with this, with the school system for years, where budgets would be brought forward. Brooks and I dealt with this for years, saying, okay, X is gonna pass its expectant life on this day. And it might last 2 weeks or 2 more years. And you end up with a $20 or $30 million budget there to replace things that are still functioning. So we have to balance some of that too. If we don't, we're gonna obligate all of our savings, and you never know from one day to the next what you're gonna spend. So that's will make an excellent budget workshop.
Yep.
I agree with what my fellow commissioners have said. I think this is good information as we look into the future. However, I'm hearing probably $120 million total. We've got $250 million in school needs. I think we need to be focusing and continue to focus and put more emphasis on preparing and working to bring in companies that will bring good paying jobs to this county, number one, and number two, will increase the tax base for the county. And that way we can afford more schools. We'll be in a better position to afford more schools and to afford, future needs on facilities.
Any other comments, questions? Is that it, Mr. Trout? Is that all you have?
Yep,
for that
that's all I
topic?
have.
All right, we'll move on to discussing the GREAT grant. Mr. Ira Hall.
Good morning, Commissioners. Appreciate your time this morning. Unfortunately, I'm going to be pretty brief. The update is going to be pretty simple. I got a few things to discuss. We'll talk about the GREAT grant number one, just a couple of good things that are happening because of what we've done with CloudWise, and then what I'm going to put on the next work session. Unfortunately, the GREAT grant has been a little bit delayed for Harnett County and several other counties. Specifically, the way CloudWise submitted their proposal, they included some residents that were outside of Harnett County. So those numbers, when the broadband office finally realized what they had done with the numbers, were not, since they weren't not in Harnett County, they couldn't really count towards our application. But the way the guidelines were written, it just made sense to Cloudwise to get rid of our imaginary county border and to continue on into the other places that need broadband in underserved areas, and all they'd have to do is just continue the fiber line across our county border. So it just made sense for them to include the numbers. So they've had to go back and take out the numbers from Johnston County and Lee County specifically, and then resubmit the application. And they did that on the 22nd or 23rd of this month. And so now we're waiting for the state to come back to us with a yes, Cloudwise is still the official winner of the, or awardee of the Great Grant, and then we'll be able to move forward once that is done. So, let's see. They still, so just because they removed the residents outside of our county from the proposal, they still may build out to that just because they have crews into the neighborhoods and stuff to accomplish what they were originally trying to get to. But it shouldn't affect our numbers within Harnett County. The number of residents they were going to bring broadband to with the Great Grant will still be the same number. I don't have those specific numbers right now. We're still trying to figure out those details. But it looks like everything's going to move forward. It's just a slight delay. Let's see. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to fill in Allie's blanks for the ARP funding side of this, but we're still planning on submitting the $350,000 or the 5% of the original proposal from our ARP funding to that. Any questions around that? Yeah, I really had hoped we'd have some better information by this point, but it's still a little bit of delay. So I just wanted, since I had a few seconds here. Yes,
I have a question. Sorry.
You're good.
How much territory has Cloudwise covered so far?
Yeah. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. So, so right now, Cloudwise has built out 4 of the towers, one in Lillington, one in Angier, one in Northwest, and I'm trying to remember where the other tower is. It's somewhere over there, up in the north part around Coates area, I think. And they've got customers on all those towers on the fixed wireless side of things. And of course, they've got fiber in the northwest part coming off of our northwest tower. And they're serving somewhere between 30 and 40 customers with that fiber. So they're expanding as hard and fast as they can right now and waiting on the Great Grant to continue expansion in other areas. They're actually in Irwin. And I have on my list that Irwin probably will be our first official fiber town in Harnett County. They'll have fiber to every residence within Harnett or within Irwin, and that is all being done by Cloudwise. That's not funded by Harnett County nor by a Great Grant or anything. That's a business proposition for them to gain more customers quickly. And actually in Irwin, there's been several people that's in the surrounding areas that's reached out to me, and one particular resident that's over closer to Triton was outside of the fiber footprint by probably about a fourth of a mile or so, but we've worked with Cloudwise, and now sometime in the next 2 to 3 months, hopefully that particular resident will be on fiber with Cloudwise and getting rid of their really non-existent DSL connection. So that's one success story out of that. And then I had another one. I'm here in Lillington, Jordan Temple, a church here in Lillington. They had 2 DSL lines and 1 satellite provider, and it was completely useless. They couldn't do anything. They tried to make their bandwidth work for them, and they could not make it work. So about 2 months ago, they actually got onto the fixed wireless, and now they're at 75 meg down, 5 meg up. They're being able to live stream their services, and it's just been a real success story for them to be able to actually have broadband to complete their church services and the other things that they have going on at church. Did I help answer some of your questions?
That's a good report. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because the citizens of Harnett County have been waiting on this for decades.
Yes.
So thank you so much. That's the reason I asked the question. I wanted you to give the report to the public to let them know that we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Things are really coming together, and I appreciate your support and what Cloudwise has done so far for us. And, and there's still other providers like Ting, and, and all of the incumbents are still doing things within the county. But CloudWise right now is the one that I have the most information on, and I see what they're doing. So in the next work session, I'm actually going to come back to you with a second amendment to our original agreement with CloudWise, the phase 1 project to start expanding broadband. And I mentioned this a few months ago, but we're gonna kind of change some of the tower infrastructure we were planning on putting up on some of the water towers again. They just found through all the studies and the extra cost of getting on water towers, it's just not worth it. But they're going to install some fiber to MCNC fiber in the northwest part and bring it back down to the northwest tower. So they'll have a redundant internet connection through MCNC, which is a lower cost and a much higher bandwidth for them. So that'll continue to boost their capabilities to bring on customers in a timely manner. And I'll bring the details of that on the next meeting, but I just wanted to mention that. And I've asked CloudWise to provide me some good updated numbers, some firm numbers, so we can say, hey, they've got 100 customers or 10 customers, which I'm thinking they're closer to 100 and some customers, which is from the beginning of the year, that's really starting to snowball now. And then I'm praying that we'll have a great ground announcement that I can say, hey, this is the agreement. We're going to move forward and we're done. Let's get this over. So any other questions?
If I could go back to that last point you made.
Sure.
And I'm sure you don't know exactly, but what kind of ballpark time frame are you thinking?
So I spoke to George Collier on that, and he said once they submitted they were supposed to submit by the 23rd. I think CloudWise told me they actually submitted on the 22nd, that they really were going to focus in on all the rescores. And CloudWise is not the only one in the state, but they're the one that affects us. My assumption based on his comments, he didn't give me a firm date, but it'd be by the end of the month. So I'm hoping by the time we have the next work session, I'll be able to tell you exactly what's going on.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Harv. Item 6, paramedic update of Mr. Larry Smith.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for giving me a couple minutes this morning. I wanted to give you an update on our paramedic academy. During last year's budget process, of course, we approached the board about starting our own academy within the county to try to help with recruitment and retention, and also to basically homegrown our own paramedics. So they're working with our medical director and all that throughout the whole process. As the board approved that, we went to work right away on hiring 2 new training captains that came in, and they began to develop the course. We worked with CCCC on a contract for our operations to approve us as an education institute through that process, which was a long process. It took a few months to get done, but we did get through that. The team went to work, our training team went to work on creating a syllabus for it, getting the training material, breakdown of the class week by week, getting that approved through the community college system. Also working on clinicals, their field operations stuff before we could even bring a student into the classroom. Got our classrooms ready to go. They did a lot of training themselves, the training staff amongst themselves to get ready for this. Then the next step was to select the 6 personnel that we wanted to put through this inaugural course. Of course, there was some testing involved through the community college, and some other selection went on through that process. We got our first team for this first class. It's William Slaughter, Micah Ellington, Jennifer Davis, Nathan Troutman, William Borvis, and Elena Melvin. They started their 5th week this week of courses. To date, these students have covered 14 chapters. They've passed 4 exams with 100% first-time pass rate, which is, you don't normally see that. There's normally a secondary retake of an exam. They put a lot of work into as students working as a team. They've covered 14 chapters in these first 4 weeks of systems, communication, safety and wellness, medical terminology, BLS skills reviewed, anatomy, physiology, pathophysiology, lifespan and development of clinicals, a myriad of subjects as they've gone through this beginning of the process. And last Friday, they actually started their first clinical rotations, and they're doing well with that. This week, they've started airway management and ventilation, and to work on some innovation skills. Last week, they were working IVs. That was a classroom that you kind of skirted by last week. I was afraid they were going to grab me and start wanting to poke under my arm. But they did a great job. I've seen something over these 5 weeks with these, I call them kids because they all are to me. They came in as individuals, and within these 5 weeks already, they've become a team. And that's what we really try to stress within Harnett EMS is that we are a team, we're a family. And we want them to be able to take this out once they're done with the class and they pass. They can further that on to be our next supervisors and on down the road. The big thing I wanted to come from the board this morning is to thank you for your support of this and your trust in our organization and your trust in our team. We do appreciate it. You have any questions? All right.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you, sir.
I've got the next one too.
Next one.
All right. I put some material in front of you this morning. And what this is Cape Fear Valley has approached us with a franchise request. And what this is they would like to put a non-emergency transport ambulance within the county to run non-emergency transport between the two hospitals into Cape Fear Valley. And just kind of a backup on the franchise request process. What will happen is the agency has to request that franchise agreement utilizing our ambulance ordinance, and we also created a checklist last year that we brought before the board to run through that process to request a franchise. Myself and the EMS chief will review that to ensure that it meets all the requirements set up in the ordinance. Then also, too, we'll report to the county manager on that process and also, too, with our opinions on that request. We do need that. And again, then we bring it in front of the board for your action, your review and action. What Cape Fear has requested again is to put one ground ambulance staffing 24/7 to meet advanced life support criteria per the North Carolina Office of EMS. And they will station that where it currently have the Lifelink helicopter at BJ. They'll have minimum staffing again for that with one EMT, one advanced provider. That advanced provider could be a paramedic or a registered nurse. The unit will again be co-located at BJ. The actual franchise request met everything that was within our ambulance ordinance. Now what I want to do is provide you with kind of our feedback from emergency services. Right now, we are currently meeting all of our non-emergency transport needs within the county. We're not having to reach out somewhere else for that transport request between the hospitals. Our big concern here too is this franchise, if it was approved, would be a potential revenue loss of around $222,000 a year to the county. Because again, this would be provided by Cape Fear Valley at that point. I've provided you a handout with the last 2 fiscal years of the actual breakdown of what we make on those non-emergency transports. Last year, Cape Fear Valley was $236,089 that we billed Cape Fear, and then the prior year was $241,294. So this is that potential revenue that we actually risk losing during that process. My big concern with these things is that we're providing and meeting all the requirements. We're not missing calls. We're not having to reach out for any assistance for that. So right now, I feel at this time that we really don't need any outside assistance. But again, it's up to the board to go ahead and review this and make those decisions. Any questions?
Question.
Yes.
With this transport program that they have here, will the patient still have the right to decide where they want to be transported to?
These are
just going to be from there here to them.
Yeah, these are interfacility non-emergency transports, which means between the two hospitals or to Cape Fear Valley. These are you're scheduled for surgery and you're sitting at this hospital, or someone's brought into this hospital and the level of care is not here and they need to be moved to Cape Fear Valley or another hospital.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is not on the 911 side of the house. This is strictly scheduled non-emergency transport. Yes, ma'am.
It's just a program that they're providing for their own patients.
Yes,
So,
and we provide that now.
yeah, I know that. I know we provide that now.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering, how was this one being set up?
Yeah.
It's just, I got you.
Yeah, and we run 3 units daily, and during COVID, we may have had to shut one of those non-emergency transport units down to put to an additional 911 unit, but we never had to turn down a non-emergency transport even with that at that point.
Will this require any funding from us at
This
all?
would be something that the board would have to decide once that request was considered on a fee according to our ambulance ordinance. And the fee is set by you, but it's not in the ordinance. That would be something that would have to be negotiated between Cape Fear and us.
At the end of the day, Larry,
Yes,
can your staff provide these services without Cape Fear being involved in it?
yes, sir.
Do you foresee any increase in the future that would prevent you from providing them?
No, sir. Any increase that we see, the growth of the county of that, we feel the growth of our system would be the way to go on that. That's my opinion.
And if I could follow up on Commissioner McCoy and Mr. Morris' comments, and I apologize, I don't remember specifics, but and it's been a while back in some general conversation, it was my understanding that there's some type of equipment that some of these patients might require that are not on our vehicles at the present time. Could you
I sure
elaborate
can. I
on
can
that?
cover that. And what we do with that is and it's usually with some respiratory equipment, some innovation stuff that's done. Cape Fear Valley, we do that on a regular basis, coordinate those calls with Cape Fear Valley because it's above our capability of care, but those are very few calls. Any other questions?
Any more? It's the pleasure of the board. Would you like to proceed with this?
I think we need to continue to provide these services and not get into any kind of an agreement with Cape Fear Valley Hospital.
Second that.
Commissioner McCoy?
I think it's requirement, additional service for the citizens here, but right now, I don't think we should make a decision to go with this right here, right now. Just don't, I agree with you. I think we're providing the service that are needed. And if we, at any time that we're not able to provide that service, I think maybe we could come back and revisit it.
Yes. I would be the first one to speak up if we could not meet that service.
Just want to clarify one thing that you had said. Would it be a loss of revenue to us?
Yes,
Due
it'd be a loss of revenue to
those
Harnett
we
County.
charge for
Yes,
those?
sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's close to
Yeah.
$250,000 a year.
So I am trying to, anyway, get to a point that I feel like I better understand, I guess would be a way to say it. So there are some transports that we currently don't do because of whatever equipment this is that we
Yes.
don't have on our
Yeah.
vehicles. And they do that now themselves anyway.
Yes, sir. We
And-
coordinate any of those with them.
And so if we authorize this franchise agreement, then they would continue to do those, plus any other transfers within their system.
Yes.
That we might,
Within the county.
that we
right
might,
now we do.
within the
Yes.
county, their system in the county that we
Yeah.
might be currently doing now.
Yes, yes, sir.
I've got a question for you, Mr. Smith. The income that we get from these transports, what does that income typically fund for you?
Typically, that goes back into our budget to personnel, equipment, keep the wheels rolling on the system.
So if you didn't have this funding, and it's almost $250,000 a year, I believe,
Yes, sir.
what would you not be able to get or have to find additional funding for?
We would have to approach the board in the budget process to
Right, it would
make
end
up
up
for that.
being other funds that would be utilized.
Yes.
The funding that's received from the ambulance goes into the general fund.
Yeah.
Right.
And so then it's just part of the general fund that's used in order to pay for the expenses for the EMS service. One thing I would clarify is there's no decision that needs to be made today.
Yeah.
They have not submitted their franchise request. They have simply come to us and said that they are planning to. They've given us the documentation as it relates to what they would seek for a franchise, but there's no formal request yet.
I move we save Cape Fear Valley some time and we say we're not interested from the get-go.
I hear you. But I
Without-
personally
without
think
the-
that, I think we should leave the option open. If we have to, we can come back and revisit
Right.
it.
That's
I
what
don't think we could just shut it down right now. That's
No.
my personal, it's not gonna cost us anything to say, hey, we may have to come back, we can come back and revisit it.
Yes. Yes, we always can. They can always resubmit another request down the road.
Right.
That's all I'm
Any
saying.
agency.
With all due respect to Commissioner Witherspoon, I would agree with Commissioner McCoy. I would like, if they're going to bring a formal request so that we can ask these questions about what they currently are doing on their own because of this equipment question, because that's the way, that was the topic of the conversation that I happened to be a part of sometime months back. So like I said, I
Yes.
don't remember all the specifics, but that
It
would
was
give us an opportunity to get their viewpoint on why they would be making this request.
Yeah.
That would help me, let me just put it that way.
So to clarify the sentiments of the board, we're just going to let this ride, let them come back with a request, and we can go on and make a decision to approve or deny it.
Yes.
Is that good?
I think that's good.
All right. Any other questions?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Major McNeil, come up and talk to us about a deputy reclassification, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The sheriff is requesting that for approval to reclassify a deputy position to a new position of computer forensic analysis. That person basically, we processed about 362 phones and computers for the past 6 months. We average getting in about 60 a month. We always stay behind. We only have one person right now that can download and do forensic on computers or phones. Most of what we do now is phones. That's the backbone of investigations now, is the data we download from phones and computers. So Sheriff saw the need that we need a second person. We usually run 20 or 30 phones behind at any one time that's waiting out there to be analyzed. Some of the courts have recently ruled that we own a timetable of how long, when we seize a phone, a lot of times we'll download it and then give it back to the citizen. We don't keep it. We just want the data off of it. And the courts have held that we have to do that in a reasonable amount of time. They've not set 30 days or 45 days. They just said reasonable. And we're struggling to do that with just one forensic analysis. So we're just asking permission on the board to reclassify a deputy's position.
Any questions? Comments? Pleasure of the board to approve this.
Put it on the consent agenda.
I'd like to put this on the consent agenda for next week. Add this to the consent agenda, Madam Clerk. Thank you for that, sir. And you're up next again. Harnett County Health Plan for the detention center.
We can come before you once a year to approve the health plan for the detention center. Sheriff Coates has approved it. John Rouse, Health Department, has reviewed it and approved it. There's no changes from last year, so we just asking for the board approval for the health plan for the detention center.
Pleasure of the board to put this on the consent agenda for next week as well.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll add this as well. Thank you.
Thank you,
sir. Appreciate it. Discuss request to accept additional funds from DOA for the apron project at the jetport. Ms. Natalie Pusser, good to see you today.
Good morning. Glad to be here. I have some accounts so you can see the numbers.
Good to see you.
We are just asking for you to approve and accept additional funds from the Division of Aviation. This is to bring additional construction administration services under the grant for additional work that was done to change the phases for our project. That was a request so we would have less downtime on the apron due to the construction. We have a brand new concrete apron project that's going on, and this just allowed less downtime and prevented airport closure with the rephasing. As you can see, the state amount is increasing by $36,498. And the local match has increased by $4,055.
Any questions?
So
Comments?
this is money that's been given for this project, right?
I'm sorry, ma'am?
This is money the state is giving for this project.
Correct, yes.
Not money coming from us.
Well, we have a 10% match, correct?
Correct.
10%?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
There's a $41,000 increase in the funding that we're getting, so we're matching a little over 4.
What's this increased funding for?
So in the beginning, we had to change the phasing of the project. There was closure that was going to affect the SBI hangar and the corporate hangars. So we would allow them more time to fly for business. We changed the phasing. And so we're just now seeing this increase in the administration fees.
Pleasure of the board to add this to the consent agenda for approval next week. Commissioner McCoy.
I approve.
Well,
Add this as well, Madam Clerk.
Will do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Discuss ARP funding. Ms. Ally Fouts.
Good morning, good morning. I am Ally Fouts. I am the lead for NC Fellow, and I'm mostly focusing on grants management for anyone else who might be tuning in. I know you are very familiar with me, board. Anyway, okay, so I have worked with Mr. Trout for the past few weeks to kind of compile an update on our report. Update on where we are with our ARPA funding right now, and kind of some recommendations moving forward based on the interests that the board has expressed. So we're just going to start with the update, making sure we're all on the same page moving forward. So we're going to backtrack quite a little bit just to make sure everyone's on the same page. So we received a total allocation of just over $26 million from the federal government in American Rescue Plan Act funding. So how this is broken down is shown on the screen at the moment. So 10 million of this money was displaced, which we'll dive more into that later. And then the remaining 16 million must be used on ARPA eligible projects, which do have much more, some more requirements. So we're going to talk specifically about the ARPA eligible projects right now. So just a review, the ARPA eligible uses are these 4, and that is response to the pandemic, both economic and public health related, investments in infrastructure, mostly broadband and wastewater, stormwater, drinking water, premium pay to employees who have incurred great risks due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and lost revenue replacement, which again we'll talk more about later, but basically it just means we can reimburse our general fund for a certain amount of money, and then that displaced money then has less restrictions on it. So just important to note that this money, all 16 million of this ARPA eligible money must be obligated by December 31st, 2024, which means we need to have a contract signed by that time. It must be expended by December 31st, 2026. So we're going to start working on through the projects. So the first project, we can officially call this completed. So we purchased Viper radios for all county staff, including EMS, HART staff, HRW staff, and the sheriff's departments. Our sheriff's department. and all local fire departments in the county. Now, it has recently been brought to light that we did not purchase radios for the local law enforcement departments, so we'll talk more about that later. But for now, we're going to just go ahead and call this project completed so we can check it off. So we allocated just over $4 million. The full price of the contract with Motorola ended up being $6 million, but minus tax, we ended up expending about $5.5 million. And I believe all departments have received or are just about to receive their Viper radios. Moving on to ARPA administration. So last April, you approved to allocate $58,700 to 2 years of a Lead for NC Fellow. So the match for the first year of the fellowship ended up being less than expected, which is good. So it came out to only $15,000. Turns out, though, this money was not ARPA eligible because the Lead for NC program is a federal program. So, we have a federal affiliation with AmeriCorps. So that money ended up having to come out of the displaced funds, which we'll come back to later. So then for the second year, we were planning to use displaced funds again. Well, it turns out the Harnett County was not chosen as a host site for next year. So we are looking at creating a temporary grants management position for 18 months through the end of the ARPA awards term. And right now that number is loose. For that salary. Let's see. The next project we have is the DSS second floor upfit, which Dewberry mentioned earlier. So I don't need to explain that too much. But we budgeted, that was the final number from the Dewberry recommendation, and we're going to put in the budget about $1.2 million just for some contingency. So that is a little bit less than the original allocation from this time last year. That was $1.6 million. So we're down about $400,000, which is good. The next ARPA eligible project is broadband, which Ira just spoke about a little bit too. So again, don't need to dive into that too much. Right now we have obligated $375,000, although not technically. Once we sign a contract, we still know we will be giving $375 to some internet service provider to increase broadband in this area. So that is certain, and then moving forward, it is possible that we might receive another round of GREAT grants, and it's also possible that we might receive some funding from the Community Access to Broadband, the CAB grant. So we'll just have to kind of wait moving forward. We just don't know. Only time will tell, and it could be a few months before we have final numbers on the rest of that grant funding. So the North Harnett Wastewater Treatment Plant. Last April, you all approved to allocate about $5 million to contribute to this massive, massive project. We are still working on finalizing the next budget amendment once we're a little bit more sure of the money sources to update that. But we did just receive news that I believe the NC Department of Environmental Quality has approved our permit to move forward with this project, so hopefully we'll be seeing some movement. Yay! So yeah, again, this is a huge project, so any additional contributions would be greatly appreciated by HRW. Premium pay for EMS, the board allocated $300,000 this time last year, but after more calculations, our maximum estimate was actually increased to $560,000. However, based on the first premium payout of $4 million, we're estimating maybe the total premium pay might be around $500,000. So that's kind of what we're planning on right now. But again, that number could go up, could go down. And then revenue replacement. This is where things get fun. So revenue replacement, basically, we just reimbursed our general fund for $10 million of public safety staff salaries, and Kimberly can give you the specific dates for that because I have forgotten them. So basically, we just reimbursed our general fund for $10 million. Now we are allowed to use this general fund as authorized by Treasury for whatever we want because now it is just our money. And so this does allow a lot more flexibility. We can have a much broader reach and we can have a much greater impact on our community because we are not limited by the federal requirements and compliance reporting requirements. It gets very tricky. So yeah, just to reassure everyone, the workers were not double paid. We were just reimbursed for the salaries that we had already paid out. So we're going to move on to now that money is our general fund money. What are we doing with that displaced money? So it can be used for pretty much everything. Again, reimbursing staff salaries is an allowable use of revenue replacement money. So now that is general fund money, they can be used for any normal governmental functions without the federal strict guidelines. And the best part is that the ARPA obligation and expenditure timeline requirements do not apply. So we are not on a timeline at all with this remaining $10 million. So the first project, as I mentioned previously, is we did end up spending $15,000 of this on the Lead for NC Fellowship the first year. And again, we were not chosen for a second year. So that's a bummer. But the good news is that now our new staff member who will not have the AmeriCorps affiliation that can come out of ARPA eligible money. So that frees up a little bit more money in the displaced funding. The Riverside project, that was made possible through the Soil and Water Conservation District and also the Cooperative Extension, who we heard from. This was a really, really exciting opportunity. So this time last year, the board approved $500,000 to this flood remediation project. The project is currently underway and actually came in at only $70,000 around. That's around the total cost at this time. So it looks like we'll have a lot of extra funding and from this. Harnett Regional Jetport. So last year, the board approved $2.5 million to invest in Harnett Regional Jetport to promote economic development. This funding is now being used to purchase new land to support the growth of the jetport, and hopefully we'll see a finalized number within the next few months. And then many IT projects. Again, we heard some from IRA about these projects to increase cybersecurity and access to broadband. So the first project is completed, which is great. So that's a final number. The phase 2 of fixed wireless, that's the $2 million that IRA did mention. The fixed wireless is the currently underway project with Cloudwise. So we'll be entering the second phase soon. He'll come back with that updated budget, updated contract, I believe, to move forward. So we're hoping that'll be about $2 million. The IT fiber extension, we have encountered some hiccups. They hit rock under the river when they were installing it. So apparently that's an increase in price, but they're still actually expecting to stay under $200,000, which is less than the board allocated this time last year. So that's good. Again, we're seeing a lot of fluctuation. Some projects are going up, some are going down, but overall, moving forward. So this is just kind of where we are now. Oops, I skipped a page. No, I didn't. There we go. Okay, this is what I meant to say. This is where we are now. This is like a big thing, so we're going to break it down. So basically, what's left moving forward? What do we need from y'all? Well, we have about $3.5 million remaining for ARPA eligible projects, and again, these are restricted into the 4 categories, and the money must be obligated by 2024 and expended by the end of 2026. Meanwhile, the around $4 million remaining of displaced funds has no deadlines. We're not as stressed about that, but we would kind of like to gauge your interest. So now I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Trout, who's going to discuss what we have moving forward.
So, thank you. Good job. Appreciate it, Allie. This project, we've been continuing to look and analyze where we have opportunities to spend this money. The issues that were brought forward recently relate to the possibility of utilizing these funds for replacement of Viper radios for the police departments, so assisting the local governments with their needs. If we were to do that, we would be looking at about $2 million in expense that we project for that. We've done an estimate, and it's at least 1.6. We're looking to cushion that a little bit in case there are price increases for that. If we do that, that leaves about 1.6 million that could still be dedicated to doing our broadband projects, and that relates to the grant projects, both the Great Grant and the CAB grant. If we were successful in getting both, that's around $2,375,000. We wouldn't have enough in the ARPA eligible side to fund it, but we could reach across and get into the displaced funding in order to fund both of those grant needs. So it's not going to prohibit us from going after those grant funds We just would need to pull some money from the displaced funding side in order to make it happen. So that's basically our recommendation as it relates to the ARPA eligible, letting the other projects there continue out, and you see how they're labeled as it relates to finalized costs for the project, estimated costs, placeholders, and requesting approval. We would look to request approval to spend the money on the Viper radios for the police departments at the next meeting. That is a project that the cost of those radios continues to rise, so we would like to implement that project as soon as possible. Also, the fact that Larry's worked hard and his staff in getting those implemented for the other organizations, we want to get our police departments up to the same standard as far as equipment. If we shift over then to the funding plan for the displaced funding, a couple of different options that you'll see in purple there. Looking at animal shelter contribution, also looking at the greenway or the purchase land for recreation. We've been discussing that as a potential project that we would want to fund. And then in addition, one of the initial projects that I looked at was the Shawtown Alumni Association sewer project. It's sewer and water, and extending lines to where they plan to put their alumni building. And so we've looked at that as a project that we would provide them the funding, and then they would work with the city of Lillington because that is, or town of Lillington, because that's their system out there. So we would provide them the funding, and then they would contract to get that work done. So they have been waiting on that project. They're continuing to make progress on their project. So we would look to see if we could get approval of that smaller one and then allow a little more time to pass down in the future as it relates to those other larger projects related to. But we'd like to have some input as to which projects we want to consider. I will say that, we mentioned at the bottom the alternative projects in the sheet. There have been a couple of other projects that were discussed, helping that were in the past, as far as additional funding for broadband, Board of Elections building, courthouse third floor outfit, more economic development property if we wanted to purchase any additional property that we would like to have as a site for development. And then looking at our solid waste convenience sites, we've had a lot of expenses. So I say all of those options strictly from the standpoint of that when you start talking about the displaced funding, it can literally be used for anything. There are no restrictions. And so it's really about what priority do you have to utilize this grant money that we've received. The good news is we don't have to make a decision on all of that spending right now. We can take our time, see how things fall out as it relates to the great grants, the CAB grant, and then what other things come our way as it relates to grants and what project becomes the priority. And so that's really something for you as a board to discuss and figure out where you would like to go. But as far as near term, we're looking to get approval for the Viper radios for the police department and the Shawtown Alumni Association sewer project.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I would be supportive of Mr. Trout's recommendation to help with the Viper radios for our police departments. That is a ARPA eligible funding. 2024 and 26 seems like a long way away, but we don't want to get to a point where we can't expend those funds and not utilize them for our citizens and have to send them back. So the fact that that is ARPA eligible, we know it, we know there's a need there. I would be supportive of supporting his recommendation to do that.
I agree with Commissioner Matthews.
On these funds for the Riverside flooding project, I thought the money was there. I thought the funding was there.
It is. It's being completed.
So I know that they are working on it, so that funding is being completed.
Yep.
I'm not, I can't say that I don't disagree. I don't disagree with the items that you have for the funding. But I'm still wondering why is it that Harnett County can't purchase um, some land for the development of affordable housings and affordable apartments for this county. I don't see why we don't concentrate and see where we can find funding for this project. We have citizens in this county that needs this, and I'm very passionate about it. And I'm hoping that you, as our manager or our staff here, can find the funding for it because it's very much needed here. I don't know if any other county don't have affordable housing for the citizens that can't afford houses. Right now, the houses that's been built here in Harnett County, your teachers can't even afford to buy them. And we need more teachers in this county. We need to provide some means to attract other teachers for this county. I'm not saying I disapprove all of this, but I'm saying that we need to start concentrating on fighting for the need of this county. That's all I got to say.
Commissioner McCoy, there was a request for the Viper radios replacement. Are you okay with putting that on the
Yeah,
consent
I'm
agenda?
okay. I'm okay with all of it. I'm just saying that we need to broaden our prospect of trying to do some things that are very much needed here. That's all I'm saying. I'm not speaking against what you all have decided to spend the funding on, but I'm saying that we need to concentrate on some things that are needed here. Needed here. And for short term, I had thought that the town was looking into funding some of that sewer out there. That's not true.
Not at
That's
this
not
point.
true. No.
Mr. Trapp, if I may, the Riverside Flood Project, that was put together before I got on the board.
Yes, sir.
Does that, if you travel down Bun Level Irwin Road, and you get right there in the curve before you start towards Irwin, there's a swamp there on the right. Is that part of, and it floods from there all the way back to 217? Is that part of it, or do you know?
I don't believe that it affects the swamp. I'd have to get Lynn to go through the specifics of it. Most of what it focuses in on the drainage system as it relates to meeting different driveways to allow the flow of the water. So the crossovers that occur at the roadway to allow drainage, those were going to be addressed by the DOT. And we were trying to address the locations where the water was being held up in the neighborhoods, and then also clean up the big tire mess that was there.
Yeah, what I'm talking about is, it's a great big beaver pond. They backed it up, and it goes on for 3/4 of a mile down through there. But I didn't know if that was included in part of it.
I don't think it is, but I'll have to confirm that.
And DOT may take care of that one, because the next big storm we have is gonna be over the road anyhow, so.
And I know there are some systems that they have that we've been talking to them to make sure that any of those areas that are not cleared out in order to allow free flowage of drainage, they're working on.
Well, I didn't want to call Mr. Anderson and bring it to his attention if that was already included in the project that's on here.
Yes.
But
I'll find
anyhow, I'll get with him.
Oh, I just want to add to what Commissioner Morris is saying, that I'm hoping that it's included in that funding in that plan, that water, the standing water on Bun Level Irwin Road, right there in several spots there beside of those citizens' homes, it's just a swamp area there. And citizens should not have to live in that kind of condition. That water, I've been down there and I have seen it, it's already pushing up the boards in those citizens' floors. Is there any way that you can see that is part of the project? That standing water has mosquitoes all during the spring and the summer. Those people have to live under those conditions. So I'm just saying that these things need to be addressed. Nobody should have to live in that condition. Are we sitting up here talking about building things that not even needed here. I'm just, it just gets to me. I'm sorry. I'm very passionate about the lives of our citizens. I don't care who they are. Go down there and look at it yourself and see how you can imagine having to live in that kind of condition.
I couldn't agree more. And just to be very clear, the Riverside Flood Project is underway. I'm not entirely sure exactly what that entails, other than removing the big stash of tires, and I believe clearing out the culverts, right? So I think that should address most of the problems, and I'm sure we'll hear an update from Lynn whenever the project is completed.
All I ask is that we look at the report and see if that is included. Those areas are included. That's all I ask.
If not, we allocated 500,000, are using 70 of it, so I think
Yes,
we
can shift
we
the
definitely
money.
have some
That's our
room to
core
work.
Why the difference?
Yeah, that seems like a very drastic difference.
Yeah, we were actually surprised. If you look at the bids that we received, the high bid was around $370,000, and this bid came in at 70. We did our due diligence with the contractor to ensure that he understood what the requirements were. He stated he did, and so we went ahead and hired him. We signed a contract and hired him based on the bid that he submitted, and so we know that that was a significant reduction in what we thought we would need to spend, but we know of other places that this money can be utilized. So we'll verify the scope of the project, and we'll get Lynn to come up and present more information regarding the scope and whether or not anything can be done to address the swamp area.
I mean, it's one of those things where they're gonna have to go in there and trap, somebody's gonna have to trap the beaver, because there's 3 or 4 dams down through that swamp. And you can drain it all the way to the Catfield River. It's gonna take a little bit.
Good deal, yeah.
And as far as, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as far as potentially using the displaced funding for the purchase of land for affordable housing, we can do that, ma'am. If that's a decision of the board to support, then we can include it in the funding. It is an option. That money is available for us to purchase land if we would like to.
I appreciate that because I know that there is other funding out there, community block grants that's coming to this state. I'm much aware of some of the funding that's coming into this area from the feds. So I'm just saying that I think that we need to look at this. We really do need to look at it. I've been talking to citizens and addressing this for some time now. And I've been told, I don't know how true it is, that people living in these trailer parks having to pay $2,000 a month for rent. And they're not up to standards of life, living standards and all. So I'm just saying that I know we can't do everything at one time. I know it takes time to do it. But I'm just saying, let us all start thinking in the ways that we can help benefit our citizens here that are in need.
I agree.
Thank you.
I agree with Commissioner McCoy. I think there's definitely a need in this county for more workforce housing. And I know that a few months back, Mr. Trout and I met with 2 different companies that do workforce housing. However, at the time, they couldn't meet the deadlines imposed by the federal government to submit their projects in Harnett County. Right now, the thing that's holding these companies back is land, the purchase of land. And so, I agree that, and I think we need to make a push to discuss with these companies that provide workforce housing. Now, this is not free housing. This is housing based on your income. It's not the Section 8 housing. It's housing based on what you're currently employed and making. And I think we need to look at that.
I agree. If we start looking possibly at some sites that, I mean, I know that we've already kicked it around in our workforce development and housing committee that we have with Price in here today. Yeah. But that's definitely something that we're looking into. And if we can find out a good spot, and now that these funds don't have the restrictions, I would be for looking for that or supporting that as well. But before we get too further along, Madam Clerk, can you add the police radios? We just got totally off like so I wanted to come back to that before I forgot.
No worries. I apologize. I don't have any problem with where we have decided for the funding to go. But I just want to make sure that there are some things that we do need to address, and the reason I guess I'm so passionate about it, because I see the developers are picking up every little piece of land, even land that's not even hardly large enough to do any much, but they can build a house on it, you know? So I apologize for being so passionate about it, but that's what's happening. And we continue to go in the direction that we're going. It's not going to be any land.
Great. Yeah, I definitely appreciate your input. I can't believe affordable housing hadn't made it on this list. So let's see. As far as this, as Mr. Trout mentioned, the only one we're really requesting urgent approval of is the Viper radios on the left. But the rest of it on the right, we could always shift the numbers around. We could potentially bump the greenway or the animal shelter down and replace one of them with affordable housing. But again, we don't need to make any decisions really on the right, with the exception of the Shawtown Alumni Sewer Project. That one is a tiny bit more pressing, but you don't need to make that decision this week, I believe, right? Okay, so yeah, other than, but the other two ones, the 2 million allocations, those are just things we threw out there because we knew those are hot topics. So yeah, you can sit on those, maybe the animal shelter, greenway, and affordable housing, and we can have a discussion in the next few months about kind of moving forward with that.
Thank you,
And don't misunderstand what I was saying. I'm not saying we need to build houses. We don't need to get into that business.
No, we don't need to get into that.
We need to work with these companies that provide workforce housing to make Harnett County attractive to them to come here. But I don't think we need to, get into the business of building houses, renting houses and things like that.
Possibly an option that we can do, and I think it was discussed previously, is a way to, because the land cost is really what is keeping these builders from coming in and being able to make, I guess, their enterprise, profitable, at least for them, in order to be able to build this. So possibly using this as a supplement in order to.
That's the thing about tax credit housing, and that's what workforce housing is, tax credit. They're going to get their money back, regardless of if they pay $40,000 an acre or if they pay $45,000 an acre. They're going to get that money back from the government. Okay, so they're not too concerned. Typically, it's been my experience of what they have to pay for land. It's just a matter of getting the land, finding the land, and acquiring it so that they can meet the requirements set by the federal government of when they have to have their proposals put in.
I do have one question, a little bit off topic from what we've been talking about, but pertaining to this, with regard to animal shelter replacement. Can you remind me what the estimated cost that the study brought back for?
It was $9 to $10 million.
$9 to $10 million. Okay. Thank you.
That's with as they recommended the design.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
I think that's all I have. Thank you all so much.
Community funding grant for corporate hangar infrastructure development. Report, Mr. Trout.
Thank you, Chairman. Through the process of some emails that I received from our House representative at the federal level and also our senator at the federal level, received notification that they were going to accept applications from various entities within their jurisdiction that they represent to go after grant money that's going to be available at the federal level. Due to the timing of receiving that, verifying the conditions, I had the opportunity to go ahead and submit. But anytime that we submit something that requires a match from the board or a match from the county, requires board approval. So to kind of cover back on what I did, I'm bringing this before you now to show you what we did. I tried to look at what options we had, the various programs. There were probably about 14 different programs that you could submit on. Some of them have requirements regarding size of population of the county, et cetera, and limit us. But one of the ones that I did find was an opportunity through the Airport Improvement Program out of the Department of Transportation funding to apply for the ability to construct our taxiway, an area that we have been talking about in our master plan for developing corporate hangars. And so I submitted an application for a little over $5 million, $5,040,000. That would then require a $560,000 match by the county if we were to receive that grant funding. This would provide us a great opportunity. We've talked about the need for corporate hangars. We have a waiting list. So went ahead and submitted this application in order to ensure us the opportunity to maybe receive some of this funding. So that's all it is. Wanted to inform you of that. I provided the documentation on the application that I submitted, both to Representative Nickel and also to Senator Budd to receive funding. And then we will wait to see if it's submitted and if we're able to be successful in getting it. But next week I'll need your vote to go ahead and authorize that, even though it's already been completed. But needed to do it as quickly as I could, but also realized we need to go back and get proper approval so that if there was an issue, we could pull back our applications.
Just real quick, time was of the essence in order for this to be submitted. Mr. Trout had reached out to me and I told him, and he also said that we did not have to accept that if we did get approved. However, it's better to get it in there in a timely manner so we at least have a shot at this. So.
I think we need to approve funding if this application is successful.
Yeah, be great.
It's okay. I think we need to concentrate on doing whatever we can to get this airport off in the ground because we need jobs in this county. We need economic development growth in this county. And if there's any way to bring some jobs that's paying a livable wages, I'm all for it.
Got a motion?
No.
Yeah.
Huh?
So will this come back for discussion?
Yes, come back.
After?
Just put it on a consent agenda next week. We'll be good.
Okay.
You said time was of the essence. I didn't know if we need to go and do it today.
He had already submitted for it. Right now, we're going to covering no basis.
Okay, so it's on the consent agenda.
Is it the board's? You go ahead and put it on the consent agenda. Good with the consent agenda? All right, we'll add this to the consent agenda as well. Thank you. All right, brings us to the county manager's report, Mr. Trout.
Thank you, Chair. The only item I have is that in discussions with Senior Staff Attorney Christopher Appel, we ended up finding out that when it regards to representation on the Board of Equalization and Review, if we have an opening on that board, there's a requirement that the vacancy be filled by a commissioner until such time as the board approves a replacement or person to serve on that board. We have had a recommendation to appoint Michael Jackson to the board. We've been holding that seat for him, but based on the rules that relate to that board and the resolution that was approved back in, looks like 97, we need to appoint a commissioner to that board to serve until such time as we're able to approve the appointment of Mr. Jackson. So I put this item on, I'd like to have this item placed on the agenda next week as a separate item, and then you all can discuss figure out who from your group would like to serve as a member of the Board of Equalization and Review.
Isn't that a District 3 appointment?
What?
Isn't that a District 3 seat? Can be somebody appointed out of District 3.
Yeah.
This district.
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe earlier, Vice Chairman Morris volunteered Commissioner
Mr.
Matthews
Matthews.
for that position.
Since I don't have anything else to do.
I'm not
I guess,
against it, because I think that if that's just a district, whoever stays in that district should be the one to be appointed. That's something I've been saying since I've been sitting
That's
there.
right.
I believe in doing things right, and that's one obligation, one
I'm
privilege that this
hoping
board
Mr. Snow
has the
will get
right
that.
to stick by. So,
I hope Mr. Snow get that issue resolved quickly.
Well, since we're having discussion now, does it need to be a separate line item if the board?
If you're in agreement as to who you want to appoint, no, you could place it then
Consent agenda.
on the consent agenda with the name specifically tagged to who would be appointed.
Commissioner Weatherspoon, do you have any sentiments on the subject?
I got a question. Commissioner Matthews, have you heard from Mr. Jackson recently? What's the status? I mean, when do we?
I
think we can-
understand that they're in final discussions, but as I said, I would need to discuss that with Mr. Snow. I don't know any intimate details, if you will, so.
The last,
All I can say, Mr. Chairman, it's currently in litigation. The case is before the Property Tax Commission. It has not been scheduled for hearing. We were just up there for other hearings last week. This matter still remains for hearing, but it's not been scheduled because we're still talking with the opposition. Other than that, I can't really give any details as far as those discussions.
Is it the pleasure of the board to put it on the consent agenda for Commissioner Matthews to be appointed in that position?
that's fine.
Add that to the consent agenda, Madam Clerk. Congratulations.
All right. Thank you. That's all I have, Chairman.
Do we have a need for closed session, sir?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Outstanding. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Entertain a motion to
Motion and a second. We are adjourned.